us to effectively address how we shift forward in society requires us to understand where we sit on the spectrum of feminism, which can be an individual view, So, for example, if you are a traditional feminist, those are the individuals who believe in traditional roles, often informed by religious and cultural associations. And then in the middle, you have your more liberal and Marxist feminists. Marxist feminists believe in the economic equality of men and women, right? Understanding the fact that, yes, men might be stronger, meaning that they're physically dispositioned to be able to do roles that require physical effort, but it doesn't mean that economically we can't access the same kind of roles and get paid equally for the roles that we're both able to do, which is very important now in the 4IR era, where technology doesn't require muscle, right?
True.
Anyone with a brain that knows how to code can do the thing. So what do we then say when we look at equity and equality opportunities in that space?
700 rands could go in your pocket. All you have to do is send through an SMS to our SMS line, which is, pay attention, 41391. 41391 is our SMS line. Send through an SMS there. And if we call you, please don't answer and be like, hi Bridget, hi. No, just get straight to the point. SAFM 87. That's how you answer your phone in the next hour. SAFM 87. Because if you answer any other way, this is the one time you must not have.
I'm doing great, thanks. How are you? SAFM 87. I didn't know I could also win a prize.
No, we're just practicing.
We're practicing. I'm here for it. I'm here for it.
And Sekim Kisa is joining me, and we are, you know her, she's the founder of Mentor. She comes in on Wednesdays, and we have conversations around personal and professional development. What's on the agenda today? You look very cute today.
Thank you. I'm a Women's Month engagements, so I'm here and there, and then I'm in front of you.
Right.
So in the spirit of Women's Month, and happy Women's Month to all the ladies,
Thank you.
we're talking about feminism and womanism today, which I know for some people, is a touchy topic, because I think a lot of people don't know where they sit on that spectrum. But I think in our drive to move women forward and to create equity and equality in society across all genders, it's important that we understand where we position ourselves in the space of feminism.
Okay. So feminism
and
womanism.
Yes.
There's a difference.
There is a difference.
And illuminate for me, my favorite word.
Yes, okay, so would you define yourself, or do you self-identify as a feminist?
I feel like every woman is a feminist. And every man that is pro-equality, inclusion, representation is a feminist.
100%. So singayivalisha vele sihambe, because we're done, right? And I mean, so Chimamanda Adichie Ngozi says that so beautifully in a talk that she gives. For those of you that don't listen to talks, humble Mamelo Beyonce, and you'll hear the speech. So effectively, that is what a feminist is, right? So a person who believes in the equality of men and women, and in access and opportunities for both of them, right? But people come from different views, whether it's religious or cultural or whatever it is. People have different backgrounds. So you can actually go online and take a feminist test. If you're not sure, it's called the Feminism IRS test, and it's a really broad spectrum assessment on different elements around feminism. So you can be anything from a traditional feminist all the way to the liberal Marxist feminist, right? So there's 5 different types of feminism. And the thing is, people often confuse feminists with the people in the street burning bras.
Yes.
Not all feminists want to burn bras.
Right.
And then so we have the feminist movement that started in the 60s. And a lot of it around fighting for rights. And what's really important around the discourse is understanding that feminism as a movement originally had a lot of notoriety around the fight for white women, right?
Yeah.
So the evolution to then womanism was then to say that actually feminism looks different for African women. Feminism looks different for African American women. And so the concept around womanism was then introduced, which then speaks to this concept that we call intersectionality, which states that as a woman of color, your intersection around your rights and how you experience the world is very different from a white woman. We can break it down further and say that your experience as a black woman who is African in a foreign country of a different gender identification, your experience is very different. So that combination of how you show up creates intersections of inequality or intersections where you are sidelined because of the status quo. So for us to effectively address how we shift forward in society requires us to understand where we sit on the spectrum of feminism, which can be an individual view, so for example, if you are a traditional feminist, those are the individuals who believe in traditional roles, often informed by religious and cultural associations. And then in the middle you have your more liberal and Marxist feminists. Marxist feminists believe in the economic equality of men and women, right? Understanding the fact that yes, men might be stronger, meaning that they're physically dispositioned to be able to do roles that require physical effort, but it doesn't mean that economically we can't access the same kinds of roles and get paid equally for the roles that we're both able to do, which is very important now in the 4IR era where technology doesn't require muscle, right?
True.
Anyone with a brain that knows how to code can do the thing. So what do we then say when we look at equity and equality opportunities in that space?
Yeah. And funny enough, I've been trying to remember, there's a conversation we had with a guest a few weeks ago. Oh, I must go back to my own podcast. And we were talking about women's role in the military.
Yeah.
And she put it so poignantly, and I'm always missing the phrase, because she's like, maybe we shouldn't be looking at what is equality.
Yes.
And we always, my producers and I are always trying, the phrase will come back to me. And I thought, that is a good way of looking at it, because she's like, in that context, you cannot equate physical for physical life.
Yes.
It does not, the math does not math.
Absolutely.
So you have to look at the other skills that the feminine bring, even in their physicality.
Yes.
And how that is still equal to a man's strength, though it's not a physical strength. And I was like, very interesting.
Yeah, and that's
I'm
not
answering your question. But
no, but that's a very good point, right? Because for a lot of the discourse of the debate is that men put us at the side, or they're standing on our necks and now we're fighting back, and the position from which we're fighting is that we are equal to men, right? And the tat for tat argument is that he's strong, I'm strong, he's this, I'm this, and that's the wrong way to approach it, right? Proper equality requires that you look at, okay, what strengths do we both bring to the table, and then being able to value those equally, and to be able to say that, okay, how do we equitably distribute resources, roles, positions, progress, whatever it is, in a way that gives power to everybody without saying, oh, Bridget, you're not physically strong, therefore you can't do this, right? So even in the example around the military, the initial argument was women don't fight, so therefore women don't belong in the military. But as a woman, I can coach something. As a woman, I can shoot. I can do things from a distance. I can be in the armory. I can be on the tech team. I can be on the ground support team. I don't physically have to be on one-on-one combat unless I am strong and I'm able to do that. So even in this debate around feminism and where we see ourselves and where we position ourselves, it's not to say that I want to take away from men so that I can be equal, but to say that we both have equal value in different ways, and that should be equitably appropriated.
it could actually be gender equity versus gender
Equality. Yes.
Yeah, that's it right there. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what we should be looking at. And I really want to encourage people to think about themselves in that spectrum of feminism and to identify where they sit on that spectrum. So you might say, I fully believe that a man's role is to provide and a woman's role is that she should be at home and in the kitchen, and that's perfectly fine according to your religion or your culture. But for somebody who's on the far end who says that as a woman I actually want to go to work, and for couples who are like, my husband wants to be a stay-at-home dad, and that's perfectly fine for our family and how we've decided to design our home base, that neither should criticize the other person. And for us as South Africa, it's not 16 days of activism yet, but GBV is something that we should be talking about throughout the year. That when we look at challenges around GBV, when we look at reasons why people are perpetrators of gender-based violence, we also need to understand where feminism fits into that. So if men are abusing their spouses because she's earning more money than him, or he's lost his job, or during the pandemic we saw a lot of children getting pregnant, and it wasn't that children were running around having sex, right? They were being raped. So where does feminism sit in that space? And we need to, as a society, think about it, because we're designing the future that our young girls and boys are going to belong to.
And I love that sort of the pointing of the intersectionalities, right? Womanism.
Yes.
Because even amongst ourselves, we just had a conversation earlier on with Kathy's producing team around the challenging question was, even around yourselves as women, where is the disconnect in order for y'all to galvanize as a collective?
Absolutely.
And I think sometimes, and we broke it down to there's the princesses
Mm-hmm.
and the feminists, but there's a whole row.
There's a
of
whole
people
spectrum of people in between. Yes, absolutely. And that conversation also needs to expand to gender identification. So
Yeah.
cisgender women, trans women, in between. That conversation is important, right? So as women, the fight is for everybody, and so there are some people who go, I'm fighting for this as a woman. I don't want to include trans women because that's not my battle. And we have to go holistically. We're building a world for women, whether it's woman or woman spelled with an X or a Y,
Woman
there's
plus.
whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
That conversation needs to be inclusive of everybody, so that we build a society that's reflective of everybody in that society.
Okay, what else is on the agenda?
As if that wasn't a large pill to digest, and I'm sure
Yes.
some people are feeling a little like, it's not my cup of tea.
Okay, let me let you think on it. Let's take a quick break, and then we'll come back and continue with the Insiki after this. Is still with me in studio as we talk feminism versus womanism. It is a Women's Month after all in South Africa, and we're unpacking these theories. I can't recall, where were we when we went on the break?
We just wrapped up the definitions.
Okay.
And so what I want to switch to now is, so we've spoken a little bit around intersectionality and sticking to the theme around personal development. I want to talk to how people become allies, right?
Okay.
So it's important to understand where you are on the spectrum, to understand what it is that you identify with, and then to go back into your workplace with a sense of consciousness that if we're actually going to have equity, diversity, inclusion in the workplace, we need to understand who is in our workplace, right? Whether you are a business and you're building up your team, or you are a large corporate and you're looking after multiple teams, and even if you're a manager, right? Thinking about who's in my team, who's in my organization, who do I represent, and who are the people that are sidelined that I need to become an ally for. And being an ally is not just going, oh, we have, great procurement or triple BE, or, we make sure that our graduate program is 80% young Black people.
Yeah.
But it's taking it a step further and going, how diverse and representative is that group? So not just the young Black graduates that come from the suburbs, but are there young people in there that come from townships? Are there young people in there that come from rural communities and villages somewhere who might not have the same social etiquette as the people that you're comfortable around? And going, are we making enough of an effort to make sure that those individuals feel included? It's organizations welcoming Gen Zs into their office, and I know
Problematic.
I'm laughing at Bridget's facial expression, but they are really challenging the status quo, and it's going, okay, as an organization, how do we make sure that these individuals are represented? So, for the most part, up until now, a lot of organizations haven't had to address issues around gender identity and gender orientation, even though they had people in the organization that identify differently. Now we're reaching critical mass, so every organization should have a policy around this. As South Africans, we're still grappling with pronouns.
Yeah.
If you look at Scandinavian countries, it's quite a norm for people to have a kind of pronoun. So when you think about allyship in your organization, really thinking about, am I seeing everybody, and am I seeing the different intersections of how they are disenfranchised, and are we supporting them across those different intersections? So for some, looking at entrepreneurship programs, for example, when you design an entrepreneurship program, you're saying, yes, we're going to support these young people. Does it actually speak to the needs of a young Black single mom who lives in a township, right?
Yeah.
Is she going to be able to get childcare? Will she be able to get transport to leave the city at night? Will she be able to commute to whatever hub where the event is going to be? So that element of consciousness allows us to be more mindful in how we design for diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Oh, mindfulness seems to be the theme of this week around here, because oftentimes there are great intentions in doing things, but then not a lot of conscious thought provided for the end user or the person who will be having the experience alternatively.
Yeah, and that's because we have unconscious biases, right? Different people have different biases, and they're unconscious for a reason, right? So it's not that you're walking around going, oh, I'm going to discriminate against Bridget because she's beautiful. But someday somebody might say to you, hey, you have a pretty bias. And you think about it and you go, Yeah, I do have pretty bias. And, so for example, pretty bias is when somebody assumes that because you're beautiful, then you're competent for the task. Or because you are dressed a certain way and you are visually appealing in a way, you're competent for the task. Equally, it could also be somebody discriminating against you because you're beautiful. So someone can go, oh, Muhlelana, what does she know about anything? She's just a pretty face that's here. There's unconscious bias around angel bias or horns bias. Angel bias being when somebody does one good thing, doesn't matter what they do after that. You will always praise them for that one good thing. And horns bias is the opposite. When somebody has done one bad thing and you never give them an opportunity to recover. So anytime they do something, even if it's good, you'll always remember that one time they were late or didn't deliver or whatever, right? So these biases, they show up. Even when you think about parenting, people have their own individual biases around parenting. So somebody falls pregnant in the office and you're automatically assuming she's going to no longer be competent to do a project, or she won't be able to deliver, or she's just not up to the task, and this is quite a big thing. I've heard women say, I'm family planning, but I'm also career planning because I'm at that critical stage where I could grow in leaps and bounds, but if I have a child, then I'm going to be passed up for a promotion, or they might look at somebody else. And it's going, are our hiring processes, are our promoting processes mindful of the biases that we have? Just because I'm pregnant doesn't mean I'm incompetent. I'm out of commission for like a couple of months, and then I'm back. And I've been doing the job, so I am literally the most competent person for this promotion. And organizations need to think about how they accommodate their talent. I'll give you one more example. Again, based in Scandinavia, there's a gentleman who runs a tech company, and for them the tradition is that women do look after their own children. It's kind of frowned upon in society to get help, not as a feminist thing, just as that's what we do. And so noting this, in their household they had a shift where they were having children, he was working, and he noticed that his wife wasn't having opportunities to work. And after 5 years of being out of the market, people are like, where have you been? And so he created a work program where you can work from as little as 1 hour a week to 40 hours a week while you're raising children. So when you come back after those 5 to 7 years, depending on how many children you choose to have, you have workplace experience and relevance to the market as well. So really thinking, how do we design for inclusivity across the board, and specifically for women and the many things we face just being women.
We'll leave it on that note for this afternoon with the Nsiki Mkhize. You can always find her on social media, by the way. She's quite active there if you want to follow through with the conversations. And